A couple of important points. First, Kratom is not an appropriate candidate for scheduling because metrogene and 7-hydroxymetrogene do not meet the 8-factor criteria that is embedded in Louisiana law, which mirrors the federal statute. There are 8 specific factors that have to be met in order to meet that criteria. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has tried twice to have that actually scheduled, Kratom scheduled, metrogene and 7-hydroxymetrogene, and failed on 2 separate times. First rejected by the Drug Enforcement Administration in 2016, and then subsequently rejected by the Assistant Secretary for Health in 2018, Dr. Brett Chawat, who is a Louisianan, by the way, and he characterized the FDA's evidence and data as being embarrassingly poor evidence and data. When I spoke
that was in 2016?
That was in 2018.
2018.
Under the Trump administration.
Right.
And when I spoke to Dr. Chawat, he said, I am not a fan of Kratom. He said, I don't know much about Kratom at all, but I am a fan of good science, and I recognize when the FDA is wrong. When you look at the testimony that I submitted, the statement by Mr. Carroll, Jim Carroll, who was the director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy in the White House, he indicates that Kratom, it certainly didn't deserve to be scheduled, and that the FDA was wrong. If you look at Congressman Jack Bergman's op-ed on Kratom, where he is a former lieutenant general in the Marine Corps and fights every day for veterans to have access to alternative therapies than the opioid prescriptions provided by the VA, he is a strong supporter of Kratom being available as long as it's properly regulated. I heard someone say that the AK does not believe in regulation. We do. There are 15 states that have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act in the United States that do have specific regulations on Kratom. And I can tell you the second point is that the FDA itself, along with the other agencies, have changed their position on Kratom in just the last year. In December of 2023, the FDA was ordered to come to a federal court and justify its position about Kratom being dangerous. Through the U.S. attorney that was representing them in that federal courtroom in Southern California, the FDA sent a message saying, we refuse to come because we have not yet determined whether Kratom is dangerous. The reason they came to that conclusion is they announced in February of 2024 the results of a safety study that was done in order to, as a precursor for a human abuse potential study. In that study, they got to 12 grams of Kratom consumed in a 5-minute period. That is a huge dose of Kratom for anyone, and all they saw was a minor adverse event of nausea. The FDA concluded in public in published papers that Kratom appears to be well tolerated at all dose levels. The problem is adulterated Kratom products. And when you look at the data and the statements today by the FDA, by the DEA, by HHS, and by the National Institutes on Drug Abuse, Kratom deaths are rare, and when they do occur, it's because of adulterated products that are on the marketplace and other unrelated health conditions that are related to that fatality. There have been studies done, and the evidence is clear that 7-hydroxymetrogene in synthesized form, which should be the target of this committee, are the ones that are creating these problems. And the difficulty is that medical examiners and coroners cannot even test for it. The person dies, and it washes out of their bloodstream so quickly that they cannot even identify it. And yet that's causing the problem. We do not ban substances because they are adulterated with dangerous synthesized material and then try to blame the underlying product. Banning Kratom will criminalize more than 325,000 Louisiana Kratom consumers. It's easy to dismiss them against this narrative that you've heard this morning about tragic circumstances of people dying. And if you look at the statements by the FDA that's in the written testimony I provided, you will see they conclude, along with the Drug Enforcement Administration and NIDA and the U.S. Congress, that in fact these deaths are rare, and when they do occur, they are because of adulterated products. Let's go after those. Let's regulate Kratom. Join the 15 states that have done so. We fully support that. We want strict regulations on Kratom to avoid these bad actors being in the marketplace.
So your name is
Mac Haddo.
Mac Haddo. I was not seeing your card.
I submitted the card.
I believe you. I'm looking for it. And you're with the American Kratom Association?
That's correct, sir.
So what about my testimony earlier about there being free Kratom being given away through a link on your website?
Mr. Chairman, there's no link on our website that allows for free kratom. There is a company, Super Specioso, which you indicated.
There's a link on your website. You go down, and we can get it up on the screen if you like, and scroll down, and it has a number of vendors, and that is one of them. You click on it, and it goes right to this site, and it pops up a little box, free kratom, right off of your website. Now, we can, if you want, we can put
Mr.
it
Chairman,
up on the screen.
you didn't allow me to finish.
Okay.
What I was saying is we don't control the marketing practices, but I can tell you that Super Speciosa is the company that provided the kratom to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for their study. It is a safe product. Now, whether their marketing practices are consistent with Louisiana law, you should stop them. We believe in that.
We did stop them. We have a law that made it illegal, but your association apparently is not monitoring the website. Otherwise, you could kick them off your website until they come in compliance.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't aware of this circumstance until today, and I guarantee you that we will take action. We have reported more than 100 kratom vendors to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for illegal marketing practices. We will do so here, too.
So you're suggesting, contrary to the testimony of the two physicians who testified, that it does not have addictive properties?
There are experts here that can address that. I'm not telling you to listen to me. I'm telling you to listen to the experts who study addiction liability of kratom. Yes.
So you suggest you agree with that study that it's has no addictive properties, despite what you heard this morning?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't say it has no addictive properties. What the science will show, and these experts will discuss it with you, is that it does not have the addiction liability as an opioid because it's a partial agonist, not a full agonist, on the mu opioid receptors in the brain. That is conclusive science that even the FDA agrees with. So I think the scientists can speak directly to it, but it does not have the addiction liability. 7-hydroxymetrogenine, the bad actor, a synthesized version of that which is sweeping the marketplace, does exactly what you described, and you should be banning it in this bill. Synthesized products are the bad actor.
Thank you for your testimony. We do have a question for Senator Abraham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me understand what you said. Did you say that you cannot identify kratom as the cause of death? Did you make that statement a while ago? I was trying to understand what you said.
So based on information that was provided at the International Conference on Kratom in February at the University of Florida, the leading toxicology firm in the United States, NMS Labs, the representative there said, our problem is the 7-hydroxymetrogenine washes out of the blood so quickly that our coroners and medical examiners cannot identify it as the cause of death, and all that's left is a small amount of metrogenine, which is derivative of the synthetic version that's hyped up and causing the problem. So yes, these deaths are attributable to, and look at the FDA statement, look at the NIDA statement, the HHS Secretary statement. Kratom deaths are rare except for adulterated products, and there's your culprit.
How's it adulterated? Give me an example.
So the naturally occurring alkaloids in the kratom plant are twofold. One is an alkaloid, metrogenine. That's the predominant alkaloid in the plant itself. And then in the drying process, a metabolite is formed, 7-hydroxymetrogenine. That metabolite, in its naturally occurring form, does not cause any health problems. It never gets above 2% of the overall alkaloid fraction of the plant, which is what the regulatory bill will provide for that's in this legislature today and in the 15 other states. But when you synthesize 7-hydroxymetrogenine, it becomes a very dangerous substance. It is a full-blown opioid. It binds completely to the opioid receptors.
Synthesized product is causing the death, not kratom. That's basically what you're saying.
I'm not suggesting that every death is because of that. I'm not at all. But the 7-hydroxymetrogenine.
One death is one death too many.
I agree.
I just trying to understand that statement of that kratom cannot identify kratom as the cause of death. It has to be synthetic. But then you said you can't guarantee that kratom doesn't do that. So,
Mr. Senator, I didn't say that. I said the experts said the tests for these for medical examiners and coroners, and they said that they cannot identify the true cause of the death because 7-hydroxymetrogenine in its synthesized form washes out of the blood so quickly they can't identify it in the autopsy.
well, they can't say, well, anyway, okay, that's good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My turn?
Your turn.
Thank you.
Board is clear.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Jack Edward at Henningfield, Baltimore, Maryland. I'm adjunct part-time professor at Johns Hopkins University for 4+ decades, and I'm vice president of research health policy at Pinney Associates, where we develop medicines to treat addiction and other substances, public health effects. I've been working for 50 years in the addiction science area, and I've contributed to most of the addiction treating drugs, including buprenorphine, and most recently an over-the-counter naloxone. They save lives. But guess what? For a lot of people, they don't work, they're not accessible, or they're not effective. I got into Kratom, I've never used Kratom, but the area of science around 2014. And by 2016, when DEA proposed banning it, I turned to my group at Pinney Associates. I said, DEA will never change its mind. Hasn't. But people are going to die because this is a lifeline away from opioids for a lot of people. We knew that by then. So I volunteered to help the American Kratom Association. We did it pro bono, and it was to get the science out. And guess what? DEA, with thousands of Kratom users commenting, and bipartisan coalition in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, bipartisan, almost perfectly, objected, and DEA walked away from it, and it has never listed Kratom as a national drug threat. It lists it as a drug of concern. That's good news. That's DEA doing its job. It's monitoring. We heard tragic stories, and my own family has been affected by tragic stories of addiction and a death. And one of my colleagues at Johns Hopkins, this also has a mother's story. She got a hold of me and she said, Jack, thank you for the work that you're doing. Kratom is a lifeline away from addiction. And our son, Jasper, who went to school with my son, it saved his life. And she said, I have all the resources in the world. She's a Johns Hopkins professor of addiction medicine, everything. Nothing was working. He got his life back. That was now 7 years ago, and he's doing well. He uses Kratom every day, makes the tea. So Kratom is something that a lot of what we heard this morning is anybody can buy it. That shouldn't be the case. Kids can buy it. That shouldn't be the case. You can do something. You can try to ban it, but what really happens? You ban the best players. You ban the companies that are making good Kratom products and labeling it properly. And they will leave the state, and then what are you left with? The bottom feeders that sell adulterated products. And the adulterated products appear to be the main problem. And that's something you can actually address. Criminalizing 300,000 plus people in the state, most of whom make tea, take capsules because it tastes crappy, get their lives back, or they function better, they work better, unlike opioids. Kratom, by the way, is not an opioid by law, chemistry, or pharmacology. It has some opioid effects. We tried to this would be gross. We tried to kill animals in an FDA-approved study to find out what level of mitragynine did it, using their own model. Oxycodone, you've heard of Oxycontin, produced life-threatening respiratory depression and death in some of the animals, bigger doses. Kratom produced nothing. We went as high as we physically could, pumping Kratom into the little animals. There were no life-threatening effects. It's not an opioid, but it does have some opioid effects. So I just want to wrap up there. I'm happy to take any questions. By the way, the research, there's more than 140 studies being published a year now. The vast majority supported by my old institute, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which supports Kratom research because it finds it just a potential life-enhancing alternative to opioids, and a plant with a lot of potentially very beneficial molecules. By the way, it's not approved as a drug because it can't be. It's a dietary supplement. FDA doesn't approve dietary supplements as drugs. It allows them on the market, because people like my wife like them better than FDA
But
approved
they're
drugs.
taking them for drug-like effects.
Huh?
They're taking them to address physical conditions,
Okay, so
right?
Kratom-
And that's why people are taking
sure, I'm
it.
happy to discuss that.
And by the way,
Huh?
you're not a medical doctor, are
No.
you? You're a PhD, so you're not qualified to treat people for medical conditions.
Correct. I do not treat people.
Okay.
I write books for medical doctors and publish in medical journals to educate medical doctors.
Right. And how much a year are you paid by the kratom industry?
I have a salary at Penny Associates. I do not work directly for the American Kratom Association, and I don't even know what the amount is because most of my work is in the development of conventional medicines, the vast majority of my work.
So you
Probably
receive no
5%
grants?
of my work is in this area.
You receive no remuneration directly or indirectly from the kratom industry? Is that your testimony under oath?
Yes, that is my testimony. Penny Associates works, sets up contracts with the American Kratom Association, with some makers of ethical products that are willing to go the
So
FDA
Penny
route.
pays you Penny and Associates pays you a salary? Is
Yes.
that what you said? And they get money from the kratom industry?
Yes.
So you get it indirectly from the kratom industry? You get paid a salary
You've heard my
indirectly?
testimony.
I'm asking you again. So you get money indirectly from the kratom industry through Penny and Associates?
Part of my salary, probably a few percent of my salary, is supported by contracts with the
Okay.
American Kratom Association and companies that are developing products for FDA regulation. We don't.
Are there any clinical studies?
What?
Are there any clinical studies?
Yes.
Double-blind clinical
biggest
studies where
clinical-
somebody took kratom and a placebo and it was all measured?
Yes.
Can you describe that? Because I don't believe that exists.
Sure. Yeah, it's a major clinical study to FDA standards done in Kratom, or Canada rather, with more than 200 participants.
What about the United States?
What?
What about in the United States?
This is for United States registration, but Canada had one of the best, what's called a contract research organization. Those are organizations that do studies for FDA regulation. They do everything by the book. And in that study supported by Johnson Foods, some of it has already been published because the company wanted it in the public domain.
Who is Johnson Foods? Do they produce kratom?
What?
Johnson Foods.
I'm happy to give you details on it. I'm not
Do they
sure what-
produce kratom? Or
Yeah, this is,
Okay, so
is their
kratom,
product.
they paid for that study.
they paid for that study.
So a kratom group paid for to study kratom, and the group that happened to say kratom's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Got it.
that's true throughout the pharmaceutical industry. Every double-blind clinical trial is paid for by most of the cases, patent holders. In this case, not patentable. There's nothing evil about that. The important thing is the contract research organizations are not going to compromise their integrity by selling out to someone. They do professional work, and that evidence is available to you. They are human clinical trials, which you just specified. They're there, and you just need to look for them, and we'll provide it.
I look for them. I saw the Mayo Clinic has some studies done, and they say it's bad for you. But be that
Mr.
as it
Chairman,
may-
Mayo Clinic has not spent one penny on one study on kratom, not one. They simply parroted the FDA's old, outdated
They
narrative.
have a terrible reputation, I agree. The board is clear. Thank you for your testimony. We're going to have some more people come up and testify, and I'm just going to go forward. We had Dr. Smith and Mr. Haddow. So,
I'm Dr. Smith.
You're Dr. Kirsten Smith?
Yes, sir.
You are?
Yes, sir.
So that was Dr.
Henningfield.
Dr. Hennifield?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm sorry. I thought that might have been a girl name, but I was confused. My bad. Okay, now I have Dr. Kirsten Smith.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So first of all, thank you all very much. I know you're very busy, and I know you all have a long day, so this is much appreciated. And I also am very thankful for the diligence that you guys and women are bringing to this issue. So my name is Dr. Kirsten Smith. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Johns Hopkins University. I came to Hopkins after 4 years at the National Institute on Drug Abuse Intramural Research Program, so that's NIDA. I was at NIDA for 4 years, where I first started, expanding my Kratom research, which began in 2017. I learned about Kratom in Central Kentucky when, I guess it was 2015, I was working in an addiction treatment center, so I am also a licensed clinical social worker. I am licensed to diagnose addiction in the state of Maryland and practice in the state of Maryland. I do not practice. Instead, I am only at Hopkins, and at this point, I exclusively study Kratom. You asked about human studies, and forgive me if I'm a little all over the place, but there's a lot that was covered today. So in addition to the FDA study, which I don't think was given sufficient attention just now, and I can talk about that, I have 2 clinical trials. If you go to clinicaltrials.gov, you'll see my 2 Kratom clinical trials. I study naturalistic Kratom use. I'm also hopefully going to be getting a really big grant from NIDA to do a similar study to what FDA has done to look at Kratom in healthy consumers. So you mentioned surveys earlier. We have a lot of those. I've done ecological momentary assessment, but right now I have people come, they stay in a locked unit for 3 days and 2 nights. They take Kratom. We measure every single thing: pharmacokinetics, behavioral pharmacology, impairment, intoxication, cognitive performance, and then we have them go into withdrawal, because these are people that use daily, and we measure withdrawal as well. And I can answer any question you want to about those studies, but I want to let you know that they're there, and there's some other studies conducted in the Netherlands. My studies are funded by NIDA or by Hopkins. They are not funded by the Kratom industry, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, so the federal government, and so the National Institutes of Health. So they are not industry studies, and I won't go into the details of that other than to say that we have not had adverse events, and those studies are ongoing. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think what's really difficult here is that Kratom is complex, and it's not this easy botanical that fits into a bucket. And I think we all prefer things that fit into a bucket, because if it were able to be done, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation. It is not an opioid. Mitragynine, even now there's work going on at NIDA showing that the binding affinity of mitragynine at the mu-opioid receptor is extremely low, lower than we even thought before. And that molecule is acting on multiple different receptors. A new paper just came out about the dopamine activity and what it does to the mesolimbic dopamine release downstream. Whatever it is not like any traditional drug of abuse, and that is something that NIDA has also discussed.
Do you feel like the people that you heard testify earlier about the abuse, the addictive nature of it, that they were not telling the truth?
Absolutely. So I think, and this is where this gets complicated even on another level. So there's a couple of things. One, the abuse potential indicators of Kratom, and that means we have to define Kratom, right? Because we've been using the term Kratom all morning like it's one thing, and that is, I believe, a mistake. It is many different kinds of products. And so I think that matters, but let's just keep it at a generic level of Kratom and not talk about some supercharged synthetic, which I would say is not Kratom, and which I do think the abuse potential is quite there. I have a study on those synthetics going on as well, and that's a different thing. I don't think they're lying, but I do think that this goes back to one of the mothers, and I got the contact information from some of these folks. She said, our story is not unique. And I would say that at least at a national level, it is unique. And I just got back from the American Society of Addiction Medicine conference where I talked to people who are treating people. This is not, I'm not calling anyone a liar, but this is not the thing that is the majority of the time happening. Because if it was the majority of the time, this would be scheduled at the national level. It would have been scheduled 10 years ago. So the problem with anything that has any rewarding or behaviorally reinforcing properties is that some minority of people with a lot of complex stuff going on will have some probability of developing a physical dependence or an addiction. That is the case for anything under the sun. Does that make it good? No, it's hard. I mean, like, I don't sit up here lightly and discount what these folks have said. I have addiction in my family. I come from East Tennessee. The reason I even know what Kratom is because of methamphetamine and heroin users and Oxycontin users in Kentucky who got on Kratom. And so there's a flip side to this coin. So I don't think they're lying. And I think, my heart goes out to them, but this is a very complicated story. And I would not be up here at all if I thought that that Kratom, quote unquote, which again, we have to really define better. If I thought that this was causing widespread addiction, I would not be studying this and I would not be talking to you.
The bill defines it as 2 alkaloids and the plant in our bill specifically.
I think those 2 alkaloids are very different, and I think if you look at Kratom as a whole, mitragynine is the major alkaloid, and the abuse potential both in preclinical models and in Kratom as a whole, which has very low naturally occurring. I'm talking about natural Kratom, not synthetic stuff. Very low levels of 7-hydroxymitragynine. Now, if we want to talk about 7-hydroxymitragynine separately, I have a lot more to say about that, and I think that's a different horse of a different color, but that's not what I'm talking about.
I have one last question for you. Are you paid directly or indirectly by anyone in the Kratom industry?
So I do consulting for the International Plant and Herbal Alliance, and I do charge a consulting fee for that, and I do expert witness work on cases involving Kratom. The vast majority of my income is from Johns Hopkins, and not one tiny bit of data that I've ever collected has been funded by the industry.
But you're paid as an expert witness by the Kratom industry?
Well, I'm paid by the law firms, yes.
Law firms.
But I would...
And those law firms, and so what kind of lawsuits are you testifying in? Lawsuits against Kratom for wrongful death and things like that?
Well, so right now, actually, no, not wrongful death. There was one that involved a seizure.
I see. So,
but I don't have a ton of them that I've done.
I see. But you testified as a witness to say that Kratom didn't cause a seizure.
So actually, I've not testified in that case. The one case I have testified in was, interestingly enough, a criminal, not a civil case, and that was in San Diego. And the whole point of that hearing, it was actually a sentencing hearing, was this gentleman had imported Kratom, and the federal prosecutor said, this is a dangerous substance, and the judge was like, we're going to have a hearing to see if this was a dangerous substance, and they actually ruled that it was not a dangerous substance. FDA was subpoenaed to that, and they didn't show up. So yes, that's to the extent of my work in that area, and I stand by the testimony I gave.
And you're not a licensed physician?
I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
But not a medical doctor?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we got several more that want to testify. I'm going to call you up 3 at a time. Adam Peak, Leanne Pearson, and Walker Gallman. So, you're Mr. Gallman, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is Ms. Pearson here or Mr. Peak? Thank you. You all have a seat, and I think we're going to go to Mr. Gallman first. Okay, Mr. Gallman, state your name and give us your testimony, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Walker Gallman, and I'm the Legislative Director for the Global Kratom Coalition, an alliance of consumers, experts, and industry leaders seeking to enact regulations to ensure consumers have access to safe and regulated Kratom products. Our mission is to advance scientific research, encourage consumer education, and serve as a resource for key stakeholders and decision makers in legislative and regulatory matters. While we support strong regulations for Kratom, including labeling requirements, prohibition prohibitions on synthetic products, limits on 7-hydroxymitragynine, restrictions on marketing to children, manufacturing standards, and the creation of a Kratom product registry, we, the GKC, respectfully oppose SB154. Kratom is a botanical substance from Southeast Asia with centuries of safe traditional use that's grown in popularity in recent years. Today, 24 million people in the U.S. report consuming Kratom for mood enhancement, energy, and wellness. With its popularity, there's naturally increased attention from lawmakers about its potential benefits as well as its drawbacks. Should I pause?
I'm sorry. Are you concluding?
No, it was clear that y'all were having another conversation. I was curious if I
You're
should pause
still
and
on the
wait.
record, so it's all being recorded.
Okay, thank you, sir. However, we oppose outright bans on Kratom. Based on the evidence of other banned substances, we believe this prohibitive action will only drive the market underground and create a prolific black market. In the absence of available products, consumers will switch to different, potentially more dangerous products. Lastly, the good actors in the industry who respect the law will leave the state, and bad actors who do not respect the rule of law will move their operations online. Together, these actions will result in an unsafe environment and the need for significant and costly enforcement from authorities. Currently, 15 states in the U.S. have passed legislation to regulate products, with Mississippi being the most recent. Currently, only 6 states prohibit Kratom, and there has not been a new statewide Kratom ban in the U.S. since 2017, as the science that has developed since then does not support the ban of this botanical. In fact, several of those 6 states are currently in the process of reversing those bans, including Rhode Island, Indiana, and Vermont. Additionally, both the DEA and WHO, who have declined to schedule Kratom, as neither was able to satisfy the standard 8-factor analysis used to determine if a substance should be scheduled. Regarding research on Kratom, the science has come a long way over the past decade, and combined with hundreds of years of safe consumption in Southeast Asia, the reality of Kratom use in the U.S. does not point to a natural botanical that should be banned. This is apparent in the testimony heard in the regulatory hearing from Kratom users and scientists. The FDA recently conducted a single ascending dose study in which human subjects were giving increasingly larger servings of Kratom leaf, up to 4 to 6 times larger than what is typical in a serving of a Kratom product. Even in this large of a serving, the study found that Kratom leaf was well tolerated in humans. Additionally, FDA itself has publicly stated in court documents that they have no evidence to suggest Kratom is dangerous. Rather than seeking to ban all Kratom products, more appropriate would be the prohibition against synthetic Kratom products and proper regulation of true Kratom products. While there is much evidence that speaks to the safety of natural Kratom products, these synthetic derivatives are known to be dangerous. It is synthetic products that disguise themselves as normal Kratom products and pose a threat to consumer safety. On the other hand, natural Kratom is a botanical that 24 million Americans, many of whom reside in Louisiana, depend on for general wellness. We'd ask the committee to reassess this legislation and amend it to focus on the real concern, synthetic derivatives. I thank the members of the committee for their concern for the state's residents, and I welcome the opportunity to bring additional scientific studies, factual reports, and Kratom experts to your attention in order to aid in decision-making. We, the GKC, look forward to serving as a resource in the near and long term. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, please, sir. Ms. Pearson, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Leanne Pearson. I'm from Baton Rouge, and I've taken 5 grams of Kratom this morning. This is my anecdotal evidence that Kratom, when unadulterated, is actually beneficial to people like myself. I hope that I can bring light to how helpful this herbal supplement can be. I've had chronic pain most of my life, as well as severe depression and anxiety. I thought the only thing that would help me was pharmaceuticals. I was on multiple medications for my depression and anxiety as a teen, and I didn't feel myself. I felt like a zombie. I finally decided to take my health into my own hands. I didn't want to rely on pills for the rest of my existence. That's when I discovered Kratom. It took a while, but after some months, I was completely able to stop taking my antidepressants, my anti-anxiety meds, as well as completely kicking opioids. I felt like a functioning member of society for the first time in my life. I felt like a person. I've now used it daily for a little over 10 years, and without this being easily accessible to me, I likely wouldn't be sitting before y'all today. It saved my life. On the psychoactivity of Kratom, first I'd like to define the term psychoactive. To put it simply, it means mind-altering. This includes caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, etc., all of which are legal psychoactive drugs that you can find. Oh, sorry, hold on, I lost my spot. There we go. all of which are legal psychoactive drugs that you can find at your local gas station and purchase without a second thought. Kratom is quite closely related to coffee, so it falls into the psychoactive category as well. It does not cause hallucinations as many people suggest. If that were the case, it would be considered a psychedelic. Kratom has been used amongst the working class in Southeast Asia for hundreds of years. It's even documented in scientific literature dated 1836. The paper states that the Malays have been using kratom leaves as a substitute for opium. This brings me to my next point, the opioid crisis we're facing in our country today. There are animal studies from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, or NIDA, suggesting that kratom does indeed ease withdrawal as well as pain within the test group, all while not doing what opioids and opiates do best in high dosage, which is causing respiratory depression and even death. This suggests that kratom can save countless lives, especially considering the #1 cause of death for young people in America is overdose. Kratom is considered an atypical opioid or partial opioid agonist to the mu receptors, which is also true for casomorphins, better known as cheese. It selectively inactivates specific signals, which may explain the more tolerable side effects compared to typical opioids. The FDA has taken the position that since the compounds in kratom can bind to opioid receptors, that kratom is an opioid. I'm not sure that's a correct assumption. For example, Narcan, which is used to treat opioid poisoning, binds to opioid receptors, but no one calls Narcan an opioid. In conclusion, the supplement saves countless lives and will continue to do so in our state if given the chance. Please allow your citizens that chance. We are not criminals. I highly suggest supporting the KCPA bill in lieu of scheduling such a helpful supplement. Sorry about that. This would ensure the safety of kratom consumers in our state, of which there are over 200,000, while not creating a dangerous black market which could spiral out of control. 15 states have already implemented the Kratom Consumer Protection Act with overwhelmingly positive results. I believe that if we want to make our citizens safe, we should follow suit. Thank you all so much for hearing our voices, and I hope you'll have a great day.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Peak?
My name is Adam Peak. I am the owner of Bella Sunrise Smoke Shop. I would like to preface by saying we have been in business since 2009. I follow every rule. I report all my sales. I pay all my taxes. I try very hard to be a model citizen above all else. We also have a very clean record of not distributing to minors. We are a big fan of protecting the kids. I'm often congratulated by my local ATC agent on my compliance. Ordinances like this will indirectly hurt people like me, and it's not going to hurt the people you need to go after. There are products that I could be selling that are advertised to me on a regular basis beyond the scope of substances like Galaxy Gas, nitrous oxide, tianeptine. If you're bored later, Google Bump It. It's a snortable caffeine supplement that's been advertised to me for the past 2 years. I see how fast they move out of warehouses, and I know the money I'm missing. I don't care to have any of that on my shelves. Kratom has been a net positive for me personally. Most of my customers, if any, come in anecdotally telling me they use it to get off of alcohol, Suboxone, methadone. It's very rare, if ever, I've heard someone come into my store with an issue of Kratom. To the topic of the 7-OH concentrate products, I do not consider that Kratom, and until I am proven otherwise, refuse to carry it on my shelf. I strongly urge you to humor the KCPA that's going through the House side right now. It will go so much further than any ban. We tried all these regulations with vapes. We got 80% of them on the market banned, and they're still everywhere. And I'm just losing revenue. I've just elected not to carry them anymore because I've been regulated out of the business. That being said, whatever questions I can answer, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The board is clear, so you all may return to your seats. And I'm going to invite 3 more witnesses in opposition. Mary Hardy and Wednesday Forest Bear. Is that right? Is that somebody's name? Wednesday Forest Bear. and Troy Dalbor. Is Mr. Dalbor here? Mr. Dalbor? Yes, sir. Yep. Have a seat, please. And so, if you all would, please state your name and give your testimony.
My name is Dr. Mary Hardy, and I am a proud graduate of the LSU New Orleans School of Medicine, and I have relevant expertise in this area. I have been the previous associate director of the UCLA Botanical Research Center, and I have been recognized as an expert by the Office of Dietary Supplements, the state of California, the government of Canada, and the RAND Corporation in Los Angeles. My research expertise is in the evaluation of safety of dietary supplements and botanical supplements, and I've been recognized as a botanical expert by those organizations I've told you before. My message to you today is about Kratom as a botanical plant, Mitragynine speciosa. That plant in its natural state contains mainly mitragynine, over 90% as the major alkaloid. 7-hydroxymitragynine does not exist in the plant botanically. It is a product of oxidation, and in the current commercial market, it is the result of a chemical alteration of a very highly concentrated alkaloid extract from the plant. In those conditions, I think it has completely changed the nature of the material, but equally, these are labeled equivalently, mislabeling in the 7-hydroxy and appropriately labeling in the regular kratom extracts. The commercial use has been widespread around the world, and in that experience, there have been remarkably few adverse event reports recorded. Only around 100 when solicited in an effort by the FDA to get an assessment on the safety. In contrast, I was a major member of the group at the RAND Corporation that evaluated ephedra about almost now 20, I hate to say this about myself, over 20 years ago, and that had 1,400 adverse event reports recorded in the FDA. So many orders of magnitude different in kind and amount. I think that the major issue with this is the 7-hydroxymitragynine, and I encourage you to keep that at the center of your deliberations. That is the material that I believe is the most harmful, and that is the stuff which has a high risk of addiction and is a much stronger agonist at the opiate receptor, so much higher risk of addiction as well. This should not be present in products labeled as kratom extracts. It is not found naturally in the leaf. And so respectfully, what I would like to ask you today is, please do not remove this material. Do not schedule it as Schedule 1. That will have untoward consequences, including a complete disruption of research in the state. You're not allowed to research a Schedule 1 product. And it will also not solve what I think is the major issue, which is the serious adulterated product on the market. So therefore, I ask you to petition the FDA to remove this product from the market, the adulterated products. And I actually also encourage you to continue what you've already started with strong consumer protection regulations on age limitations and on the label, focusing on the label, so that what's in the bottle is consonant with what's on the label. If that happens, toxicity is much less likely to occur. And also that would allow you to make very clear distinctions about label size and serving size and a total serving for the day. And it also allows you to appropriately add warning labels to this material. For example, not to be used during pregnancy, not to be used with certain prior medical conditions, to be used under the supervision of a medical provider. And so for all those reasons, I respectfully would like you to reconsider your position and not schedule this drug.
Ms. Hardy, are you
Dr. Hardy.
Dr. Hardy, so you're a licensed physician?
I am.
In California?
In California.
So what brought you to Louisiana?
two things. I am a native here. I grew up in New Orleans, and I studied at LSU. And I was asked to come by my friend, Dr. Paula Brown, who has a lot of experience as a chemist working with Kratom. And she said, would a doctor be available to go talk to the committee? And I said, ooh, see my brother and sister, my nieces and my great nieces and nephews? Yes, indeedy. So I agreed to come to do this.
Two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
Very good.
2 birds and 1 stone. Exactly.
Okay. Wednesday Forest Bear, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's me. My name is Wednesday Forest Bear. I'm a constituent of St. Tammany Parish. I'm also a Kratom user myself and have been for many years. I used Kratom originally because I have a neurological disorder, which I'll also apologize for if my words get messed up a little bit. I have a neurological disorder as well as I have a spine disease that makes it so I actually, before I found Kratom, I was mostly in bed all the time or in a wheelchair. Now I can walk on my own. I can do everything I need to do. I went back to college. I became a dog trainer. And then I kind of switched and I wanted to save lives the way that my life was saved. So I got into the Kratom industry. So in the Kratom industry, I opened up these communities online for users to be able to speak back and forth to each other, and so we could get education out there, so we could get our vendors who I work with, and let me say, when I say work, not monetarily. I do not get any money I don't make any money from the Kratom industry at all. I've done this all on my own because I would like to save other people the way that I've been saved. Now, before, I was using oxy and morphine at the same time. Sometimes I even needed stuff as strong as Dilaudid. Since I've been using Kratom, I haven't needed to use it anymore. I'm able to function in society. I'm able to do these things. My online communities now are up to 26,000 members that speak back and forth, and I work with over 200 vendors that are in the United States as well as in other countries, and including Indonesia and Thailand, which it is not banned in any longer. This in front of us, all the countries that it's banned, there's actually a lot of them that's not correct anymore, as well as some of the states that are changing things like Rhode Island and everything. They're going to change to do studies and try and get a KCPA out there. So what we've been working on in my communities is self-regulation with vendors. So I don't support vendors that don't want to put their regulations out themselves, that want to put some bad stuff out, that use addiction-based marketing instead of harm reduction-based marketing. And the difference between that is something that will have a bad name that is something like fentanyl or something like that. They'll be called Fenties or something like that. We just kick them off the board and say we don't want anything to do with you. So these self-regulating vendors, they're mostly called small batch vendors that I've worked with and gotten to be really good friends with. We all together would like all of you wonderful legislators that I thank so much for working so hard to please regulate instead of ban. I want you guys to please think about these people that I was saved, and all of them have been saved. Please do not ban this and put them out on the street. I hear every day, if this is banned, I'm going back to heroin. If this is banned, I'm going to have to go back to fentanyl. If this is banned, I'm going to have to go find a doctor that will give me something, which doctors are not giving out meds anymore because the DEA has a list that they're trying to get rid of our whole opioid epidemic, which that's what we were trying to do with Kratom, because it is a substitute. Yes, it does work on the opioid receptor. This is not an opioid itself. It is very not dangerous in taking it. It helps so much. My spine is so bad that the bottom half of it faces the wrong direction. But you saw me walk up here without any pain at all. I take the Kratom every single day, and it literally has changed everything that I can do in life. And it's done that for so many other people, and that's why I am so urging you to please, please do not ban this. Regulate. Do not over-regulate, but regulate. All right, thank you very,
Thank you for
very
your
much.
testimony. Mr. Dalmore?
Yes, sir.
Troy Dalmore. State your name and please give us your testimony, please, sir.
Yeah, my name is Troy Dalmore, constituent of St. Martin Parish. Good afternoon, and good to be here. So I've told my story numerous times of a horrific accident that caused a back injury and a couple of back surgeries of a fusion that led me down this road. But over the years, things have changed, and so has my perspective. I realize the Kratom I'm fighting for is not the same Kratom in this ban proposal. It's not at all. I'm a victim, survivor of the opioid epidemic during the early 2000 years. By God's grace, I'm 11 and a half years sober and clean. Getting there wasn't easy. I would not have survived without Kratom. I've been taking unadulterated pure Kratom for over 10 years. I do a wellness visit with the doctor every year, and my numbers are normal. I've had only a positive experience with Kratom. More energy, less anxiety, manages pain, zero cravings for alcohol and opiates. In my experience, I can say the Kratom that I take cured my addiction. I'm blessed with an angel of a wife of 38 years, two wonderful children, and 4 beautiful grandchildren. I'm an IT specialist for a multi-billion-dollar company employed for over 30 years. I've listened to the argument of those that want to ban Kratom. What they want to ban is not the Kratom I take. It shouldn't even be called Kratom, as it gives Kratom a bad rap. An analogy would be banning caffeine. Numerous deaths have been associated with caffeine consumption. We have these 5-hour energy drinks with 230 milligrams of caffeine. We have this new Monster Energy who released their new Killer Brew Java series with over 300 milligrams of caffeine. The FDA and other experts say your daily intake should not exceed 400 milligrams per can. But we're not talking about banning caffeine. I won't even go into alcohol and tobacco for obvious reasons. My point is, when Kratom is taken in its pure, unadulterated form, it's safe. We now have Kratom that's being sold in synthetic form. We need to stop calling this Kratom. I see names like Devil's Blend, El Diablo, Boosted Crap. These have no place in the marketplace. I have my own name for this stuff. If you want to get rid of K, we call it K-Rap, short for crap. Let's get rid of this crap. Mr. Mars, I know you're doing what you think is right. I really do. But banning is not going to fix this. We tried banning this for years. Never got anywhere. Regulation is where it needs to be at. I don't know how to regulate it, but the answer is not banning it. So I urge you to group up with Mr. Boyer, and let's do something. There's people here that are ready to regulate. It's regulated in a bunch of other states. And that's my story. I'll say one more thing, just because in my condolences to everybody here that testified earlier, I totally believe their story. It's not the Kratom I take that happened to them, but something happened to them that caused this, and it can be fixed with regulation. But these addiction centers, and I've been to many, is part of the problem. And God bless the counselors, because I had a few of them that were really, really good. But to put a person on Suboxone that's on Kratom, it is horrific. Without Kratom, I would have never gotten off Suboxone. It's a trap. You get in with these, with the addiction center, they put you on Suboxone. Yeah, for a year, I thought Suboxone was the way to go until the insurance company didn't pay for it no more. You got to go see the addiction doctor, who's the new drug dealer now. So you got a doctor visit, a drug test, an addiction doctor. Insurance company don't pay for it. Who can afford $1,000 a month for Suboxone? It's a trap. All of a sudden, what do? I asked God for help, and God let me down, and here was Kratom. Blessed me with that. I was able to wean off the Suboxone, which is impossible to get off, and then we can debate that back and forth with anybody that wants to, but you're not going to get off of it by itself. It has a double half-life, and it's not good. There's no way to get off of it. Kratom was the only thing that helped me get off of it. It saved my life.
Thank you for your testimony, and I appreciate what you're saying. If this drug or this product can do something to help people like you, then the FDA needs to approve it and regulate it, and you get it at your pharmacy, like so many other things. And that's my opinion. But thank you for your testimony.
I understand, Mr. Morris, but how can you know what it costs to regulate something? You're taking away something that's helping people. You know, why can't I go and say, I want to help myself? Why can't I put in my body what I want to put in my body? And if we have something that's safe and we regulate it and it's safe for me to get, why can't I can drink a cup of coffee in the morning? I don't have to drink 8 monster drinks. We have to have, I know there's bad actors out there. I know there's people that'll do the wrong thing. But for the people that are doing safe things for their lives, we take dietary supplements all the time. If the FDA had their way, we wouldn't have a dietary supplement left. Because of the Deshay Act, we have that. Without it, we wouldn't have a choice in anything we put in our bodies.
Well, I respect what you're trying to tell me. If y'all would, the board's clear, and I got a couple more witnesses that want to testify. Brennan Wilford and Bobby LeBlanc. Yes, sir. Please state your name and give us your testimony.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brennan Williford. I've been a lifelong resident of Louisiana. I reside in Port Allen. I'm here today to speak on behalf of myself as well as the over 300,000 Kratom consumers in Louisiana. So a couple of years back, there was 2 bills that were going through. House Bill 15, if I'm not mistaken, and Senate Bill 94, both looking to schedule Kratom as a Schedule 1 substance. I did get my testimony back then of a couple of friends of mine who have used Kratom successfully, but I never really delved into why do I personally use it. The friends of mine, one of them is actually my girlfriend who used it after she had a major surgery done on her foot after she tore the entire arch of it. Combined with physical therapy, it really did work wonders for her. The other one was a veteran for the U.S. Navy. He ended up using it to break a cycle of opioid abuse as well as alcoholism. But as for me, in today's day and age, the terms depression and anxiety have been slung around to the point where they basically lost a lot of their weight and meaning. I mean, everybody has it. But do they really? Because there's a stark difference between being out of breath from a brisk jog and having a full-blown asthma attack. The thing about depression and anxiety is that when you live with it for so long, masking it basically becomes second nature. People ask if you're okay because you're quiet, and of course you just say you're tired. They ask what time you went to bed, and yeah, I should probably go to bed earlier. You smile, nod, and agree because you don't want to worry, you don't want to be a burden. The things that you enjoy become a redundant chore because you have no energy to spare on the things that you used to enjoy. All colors, sights, and sounds become muted. Time becomes meaningless as days, weeks, and months just blend together. All the while, you still have to work. You still have to provide for your family and somehow just power through. But it doesn't always work. You can't positive pee your way through a chemical imbalance in your brain. I mean, what are you supposed to do whenever medication, therapy, and prescribed antidepressants and stuff like that don't work? There is no cure for depression, but Kratom has definitely helped me manage the symptoms that if were left unchecked, I'd more than likely not be here today to regret the actions that I would have taken. There are people in this room who are honestly better and more competent than myself, but who responsibly consume Kratom for various reasons. Fathers, mothers, blue-collar workers, and veterans, one of whom I personally knew. And everywhere in between where Kratom has either saved or improved their life for the better after prescription medications or the healthcare system has failed them. While I know that this bill was created in good faith, to not only take that away from Louisiana citizens, but to criminalize them would be a severe injustice to Kratom consumers and Louisiana citizens alike. I humbly ask that you consider regulation instead of an outright ban. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Mr. Williford?
LeBlanc. Bobby?
Oh, you're Mr. Williford. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Yep.
Please state your name and give us your testimony.
All right. My name is Bobby LeBlanc. I'm from the Houma, Terrebonne Parish area here in South Louisiana. I want to point out a couple things, and look, I'm going to give a little bit of my background, which, again, I want to apologize to Senator Klein-Peter on this one, because a couple years back when this bill did go through, I unfortunately couldn't come here when we had the two control bills and Representative Godey's bill. I had a very great conversation with Representative Godey, but unfortunately my wife has been dealing with a lot of medical challenges. And to this day, we are dealing with a lot of medical challenges. We found out last week my wife is neurologically second opinion, is getting some information about she's having abnormalities of the brain. With that said, it's coming to find out when her general doctor tells her that her blood pressure at 180 over 120 is normal, which is insane, okay? With that said, we go to her heart doctor, Dr. Ladd, William Ladd here in Terrebonne Parish. Amazing doctor, comes out and says, no, that's not right. We got to get that under control. Starts taking them medications, throwing them every which way. My wife has been through a medical journey like it's going out of style, okay? She has had been cut on her neck. She has an appendix cut out, an arm cut right here over a thing that they thought came back. She had a Baker cyst cut out of her knee. My wife's been through a medical journey. With all that said, I have seen the medical craziness that has went on through her journey. Heartbreaking. But I want to apologize to Senator Klein-Peter because I couldn't come here and testify, and I've tried to reach out to your office and all got with Godey. So Senator Klein-Peter has a bill here, House Bill 176, which I'd love at some point to talk to you more about that, but it's regarding something else, which is kind of concerning, and when I bring in this retail standpoint, we're going to talk about that. And then we also have this hemp bill here, which outlines the Louisiana Drug Dealer Liability Act, okay, which under the consumable hemp stuff. So what I want to point out here, first of all, is my wife's medical journey has been disappointing to myself. I just recently canceled my health insurance. 45 years old, cancel my health insurance because I have seen the disconnect with our medical system. I told my wife years back, you need to take Kratom. Her Baker cyst on her knee was very minute. Started blowing up. They kept doing cortisone shots, taking it out. But when she was taking her Kratom, it was low. But then we had to go. She had another episode come about. We had to go, and we had to start looking at the narcotic side again, which again, when me and my wife got first together 20 years ago, she was on 5 narcotics. Scary. Very heartbreaking. I'd love to share this testimony with all of y'all at some point, and y'all will be receiving an email from me and a video from me here shortly. Unfortunately, with how fast this is moving, it's just everybody's time is precious. But I'm not going to get on to my wife much more. I'm going to go back to my personal testimony. I suffer from severe stenosis of the spine. I have the worst back pressure in the world every morning when I wake up. I dread every day between, if it's not the cat pushing me out of the bed, it's my wife trying to probably get me out of the bed because I cannot move because I feel like I'm paralyzed. I can't drink coffee in the morning because coffee makes me extremely sick. I think what it is because I'm high-strung with life. I do not do drugs. I don't even take a Tylenol without an argument. The point is I wake up like I need my relief. I got 6 companies. I'm a very big resource to all you guys on a retail level, and I'm going to go into explaining who I am in a second. But my point is Kratom is my lifesaver. For people to label Kratom as gas station heroin, I have an issue with that. But for people to label heroin as the stuff that we are hearing about what is very serious in the market, yes, I go back to who I am. I am a retail store owner for 15 years, having a tobacco store. I have been in the convenience store business ever since I was a child, running a register at 7 years old, okay? Running my own convenience store at 12, 13. One thing I've learned in the last 15 years is this industry has gone haywire. The synthetic days, we all remember them days, right? You had the foreign line, you had the American line. I played them games. I'm not the first one to say, hey, I haven't benefited from it or I haven't played it, but you know what? The synthetic days opened up a day for me because it made me realize where everything is heading. And now here we are debating a hemp bill, a vapor bill, a hallucinogenic bill, a Kratom bill. One thing I've learned about all of these bills is we need to have backbone. And that backbone is to listen to these people with the science guys. Look, I'm not sitting here saying that the AKA is doing the best thing or the GKC or any of these guys. What I'm saying is that's some very good experts. And if we would learn from what they're trying to do and what they have brought to the table, we're going to, as senators, as legislators, we're going to learn that, hey, what's to come? Because you know what's happening right now with vapor. We talk about our youth. And it's sad because I have a picture on my phone from a law enforcement agent who is vaping on a vape that I cannot sell. But yet a law enforcement agent can vape it, and he's vaping it by a Mardi Gras float in front of a child, in front of everybody. We know how we celebrate Mardi Gras. Kids all around. But it's crazy now that I have to entertain we're entertaining the drug dealer, the border, state, and internet all too well. Because why? We keep banning things and not understanding where we need to go. So I can say I'm an expert because being in this business for a very long time from the retail aspect, and I would invite any of you to question me and challenge me on every which direction. But I'm not going to go into what everybody has done because these testimonials have been great. From good side, bad side, I feel for everybody who has lost a tragedy because it's understood. But I can tell you one thing, Klein Peter, you made your best choice you could have done a couple years back by aligning yourself with that bill. And Boyer's bill is trying to do the same exact thing. Let's jump aboard. But my experience is unexceptional. I'm not paid for it, number one. Number one is I'm a Louisiana resident, born and raised here, and y'all are forcing me to go to another state and advocate for people to come out of my own state to another state. Look, I got a connection in Florida. I got stuff in Mississippi. Because it's sad that every day of my life that I work my smoke shop, I hear stories from people how Kratom have saved their life. Now, listen to me very clearly. 15 years I've been selling Kratom. I have not been in a courtroom. I have not been in a jailhouse, but more importantly, I have not been in the hospital. Why? Because it's not adulterated Kratom. I know all of these guys all too well. I know the business inside and out. I have told a couple of these players they're going to go to hell for this, for what they're doing. So yes, we need protection. No offense, Senator Morris, to you, Bill, but listen, I think the concerns is real. It really is. But I'm going to close this up like this. Look, we need regulation. We need responsible business owners like myself who understand the industry. You know, listen, I'm very close to the sheriff of Terrebonne Parish. Here's a coin to prove it. I'm very close to the head narcotics agent who 15 years ago wanted to put me under the jail cell for synthetics and everything else on analog statute. And I point that out because Tanner McGee, who was an ex-legislator, which we all know real well and respect, is still my attorney to this day, and you can go ask Tanner day in and day out how much I beat him up about what's right and what's wrong. Senator Mike Fazee is a very close friend of mine. I texted Mike the other day and said, Mike, this is death to Louisiana. This is what I call this, death to Louisiana. Listen, we're going to have tragedy and everything, but we need protection. And listen to me from a store owner standpoint. We are scratching the surface on what's to come. These synthetic guys are playing a bad game, and I have seen it in all these years being in business. So yes, I am an expert when it comes to the retail side. I'm not a science guy, but I am a consumer, and I'm an expert. And with all that said, look, I go back to the route we have been down with vapor. My business has lost 62% in sales at a rate of 30% a month right now. I'm on the verge of shutting my door because I've had enough. My passion is because I see where we can go, and I know as a legislative body, we can make better decisions with experts like myself and everybody else. Look, these addiction clinics, even these sheriff's offices, I get it. They got a real reason. But I'm not going to go sit down at my sheriff and beg him to take me to jail, and 2 days prior, go to my narcotics agent because my wife is doing a little bit of THC stuff, begging begging him to come take me to jail. But yet, what they tell me, Bobby, we know who you are. Go look at my track record. I have history to show what's right and what's wrong, and I could be the one that's going to help y'all determine what's right and what's wrong. So listen, Senator Morris, please rescind your bill. Senator Klein-Peter, please advocate Boyer if possible. And again, listen, I'm here for any questions. I would love for any one of you, to give me a challenge, and you will see an email from me shortly. Thank y'all.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony. You all may leave the table and go back to your seats or whatever you want to do. We do have another card for somebody who wants to speak that came in. Aaron Sandifer wants to speak.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. My name is Erin Sandifer, and I am from Denham Springs, Louisiana. I have a few things to say here about this. I do serve on my parish council, and we are talking about this for the second time. We talked about it 2 years ago, and a ban failed. There was a lot of misinformation about it. When it came to my council 2 years ago, I only knew it from the non-allopathic world. I've never taken Kratom, so please know that. But I was in the allopathic healthcare system with some pretty serious issues that nobody could figure out. As it turns out, it's MTHFR. That's a whole different can of worms, but I had to go outside of the modern healthcare world to find out what was wrong with me. So that's how I came into the holistic world, the alternative medicine world. When it came to my council 2 years ago, what I knew about Kratom, and this is all I knew, it had been around for probably 15 years or more, and that parents gave this to their children as an alternative to ADHD drugs, the drugs that they give, Adderall. Those are my understanding is they're pretty addictive. I'm not a healthcare professional, and so parents do that. They are not going to come and speak to you because they will be ostracized for it. So that's what I came to the table with, and I thought, well, what are we doing? What are we banning here? You know, what's going on here with this? It did not pass 2 years ago. It is back up. I do know that in my experience with the alternative medicine world, there are many things that are available, and big pharma is a problem. They did not help me. In my research since then, I've talked to war veterans with PTSD and all kinds of trauma. They do take Kratom. There's a difference between, it's my understanding, there's a difference between the true Kratom and the additives that they're selling in the gas stations throughout Louisiana. I'm not here to promote what they're selling in the gas stations throughout Louisiana. I think that absolutely does need to be done away with. That should be banned. The American Kratom Association recommends a regulation on this. 21 above, you know, I haven't updated myself on that recently, but they do recommend regulation, and they do not recommend all of these horrible addictive additives that they put in it at the gas stations and they sell it. In the past, if you will remember, if somebody wants to get high, they're going to get high. If drinking a can of gasoline increases their heroin high, they're going to drink it. Years ago, they were eating angel trumpets. I don't know if you are familiar with that beautiful plant. I'm a gardener. I wanted an elephant trumpet, definitely not to smoke or ingest, but just for the beauty of it. And I couldn't get it because people were using it to get high. An addict is going to be an addict. So I will say the only group that really has come forward in the past 2 years, in my experience with this, are the war veterans. I guess they come out of war with many different traumas, and they have admittedly tried to numb that pain with opioids and various substances, and The true kratom is the only thing that is helping them, and they're not addicted. I've talked with doctors and nurses, heads of the ER that take this and recommend it to people, but they're in hiding, and they're not going to come and tell you that because they will be ostracized by their medical community. Parents aren't going to speak, doctors aren't, they're just not going to come forward. So I felt it was my responsibility to come up here to say this to you. We are taking it up on our council right now. I do not support a ban. I do support regulation. The American Kratom Association supports regulation, and I do not support the additives that go in it. And again, I've never taken it. I don't have any familiarity with it in that way, but I hope that you would consider tabling this and working it out to regulate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, we do have other cards in opposition not wishing to speak. That would be Cheryl Sutton, Power Coalition, Terrence Wynn with Pipe, it looks like, Elizabeth Adamson, Nancy Goodwin with ACX Initiatives and World Kratom, John West, Urban League, Darren Bovard, American Kratom Association, James Crenshaw, AVX Initiatives LLC, Tamika Hayda, Geraldine Ellis, Linda Hayden, Travion Hayden. I would like if Dr. Pete could come up just for a second for information only. But before he says anything, I do have a cleanup amendment. There was some inadvertent language that was put in the bill that was copied over from the marijuana legislation. So to take that part out, I have Amendment Set 1019 that's been handed out. Has everyone had a chance to look at that? Jonathan, you handed it out to everybody? No, he hadn't. I thought he had handed it out already. In any event, I'm going to offer up this amendment set 1019, and it's to take some language out about writing prescriptions for Kratom, which is impossible now. And so that will amend the language previously adopted. The board is clear. Are there any objections to the adoption of the amendment? I've moved to adopt. There being none, that amendment set will be adopted. Dr. Pete and Dr. Posada, if I said that correctly, if you could just address some of the issues briefly with the purported positive benefits of Kratom and the testimony you've heard.
Yes, sir. I do really appreciate the testimony, especially from the patients and family. And I think on both sides, you've probably seen how many lives are impacted by addiction in our state. I think one of the core principles of addiction is meeting patients where they're at and trying to meet their goals. And I think you've heard a lot of people talk about it as an alternative to some of those FDA-approved medications like Suboxone. And I can speak for most addiction med doctors that there really is no agenda when we come into that room with the patient. First thing we ask them is, what do you want? What are your goals with your substance use? And the folks that I have had to treat with Suboxone have, to a T, come in and said, please, I've tried to get off this and I need some medication to help. And that's where the Suboxone has been really helpful. I kind of see two different patient populations maybe getting conflated. I think there are patients with opioid addiction where they see Kratom as a harm reduction approach, something less deadly than fentanyl. And then I think there's a lot of patients that you heard from that maybe would not have been addicted to Kratom in the first place if it was less accessible. And that comes down to the science of addiction. We know it's a chronic brain disease, but we also know that environment plays a role in the accessibility of the substance. That's something that I think we learned from the prescription opioid epidemic. Just to comment on the regulation piece, when I'm not seeing patients at the department, that's my other role, and just some reflections from the consumable hemp legalization. We've got a pretty lean and mean team in that department, and just want to highlight that kind of resources and public trust in a substance are on a spectrum. In other words, I think to make something very safe at a level that the population expects takes a lot of effort and staff time to go in there and make sure it's safe. And that often involves a lot of state resources and TO. And then just a final reflection on the studies. I think you did hear that there's a lot promising and in process and coming down the road. But just to reiterate that I don't disagree with that, but there's not been one FDA-approved over-the-counter drug or treatment that involves any of the active ingredients in Kratom or the Mitragyna species. And as physicians, I think we frequently reevaluate, our dogmas and our maxims, and I think if the data changes down the road, we would love to take another look at it. But right now, there's certainly not the body of evidence to support this as a regulated treatment. And then especially compared to what is out there, treatments like Suboxone, which again are not for everyone, but we know has a mortality benefit of 50% at 1 year for opioid addiction.
We do have a question from Senator Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we've heard a lot today, and it has been extremely somewhat emotional. I've really have heard from the people from both sides and feel a little kind of torn. And I guess one of the things that kind of concerns me a little bit, if you can speak to this, is if this goes into law, the propensity for the underground market, which a couple of people kind of spoke to, which kind of concerns me a lot.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and I think regulation has to go with treatment, or restrictions have to go with treatment. That's something that I, at the department, feel very strongly about, and we've had a lot of initiatives in the last year to try to get folks with addiction into treatment. We got a lot more work ahead on that, but I think we need to do both. I think lower the barrier to get into care so we can get people into evidence-based treatment.
Yeah, and then that does go back to, making this actually, creating this and making sure that it is tested, tried, and all those things, and it has been approved, FDA approved, right? So that people can actually really take it. And there was a doctor here, right? She was from NFIDA or whatever, some acronyms from the federal government. I don't know if she's still here. Oh, yes, she is. Because I wanted to ask her, are they in the process now of really looking at?
She's not a physician. She's not a medical doctor, but
She worked for the department, though? Sorry, wait till you get to the mic. No, come on to the mic. No, because you work, what department do you work for again?
I'm in the School of Medicine at Johns Hopkins University.
No, what did you say that you work for the department?
So I was at NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, for 4 years, and then now I am NIDA funded. So my Kratom research is funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and I have 2 clinical trials.
So is there a movement at this point to actually have this regulated federally?
So I think there's some confusion here about what FDA and NIDA do. So NIDA has spent about $60 million, and they're still, even internally at NIDA, studying metragynine and 7-hydroxymetragynine and Kratom. So that work is both extramural and intramural ongoing. FDA is with Baylor University doing the second of a 2-part study on safety and abuse potential. That is happening now. So FDA has already done a study where they found that doses up to 12 grams were safe and well tolerated. So that's already occurred, and they're now moving to the second phase. FDA does not approved dietary supplements, which is technically what Kratom is marketed as a botanical. So they couldn't approve it.
Okay.
Even if they were to do like thousands of studies. Now there's a pharmaceutical path, and then there's a natural products path. So the National Institute on Drug Abuse actually just put out a notice of special interest for funding natural products such as Kratom, and myself and physician colleagues actually are putting in a grant to study Kratom in that respect as well. So what NIDA is essentially looking at is mitragynine as a pharmaceutical and then Kratom as a botanical. And that would be not approved, it would just be regulated, whereas a pharmaceutical would be approved. So we're talking about two different things.
Where is that in the process? You say, is that something now that's actually being pursued?
Yes, so NIDA is pursuing isolated mitragynine. So that is its own, and that's the major constituent of Kratom. And then we have the FDA study, which is a whole botanical, which has mitragynine in it as well. So one is an isolate and one is the full botanical. And then what I study is all of the products that are from extracts to the leaf material and powder and things like that.
Okay, so is it moving through? Has it been approved?
It takes a long,
Okay.
I mean, it's moving, but science is very slow.
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, like that's just how it is. And you know, Kratom has been used in the United States for 20 years now, but it wasn't until 2017 that we really started to study this.
Okay.
And so, you know, unfortunately, things just are not quick. And that's the way of it. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Well, to some degree. I am listening to both sides. This is very concerning. And my biggest concern would be once the bill goes into effect, then will it begin to create additional issues? And that would be, I guess, my biggest concern. But we do have a problem now. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barrow. Senator Abraham.
Thank you. Doctor, I asked you earlier about, you said that you were seeing more Kratom addiction than crack cocaine. I think you made that statement. Is that synthetic Kratom, or can you tell what it is? Is it, because we heard all these different testimonies, and so is there a distinguishing part of that?
I don't have great tox data on that, but it's probably a mix of both and heavy on the synthetic Kratom.
So the Kratom in the pure form, you still believe it's addictive?
I think there's a pure form in most of the substances that my patients are using, in addition to the synthetic component. I haven't seen a patient with pure flower in my clinic.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Prasada, would you like to add a little bit before we close out?
Yeah, I think part of the major problem is that we don't know what's out there. It's not regulated, so it's not labeled. So whether somebody's getting from our gas stations 7-hydroxymitragynine or they're getting just the pure leaf form. I mean, I've got 3 toddlers. If they walked in there and pulled something off the shelf, they're not going to know the difference, you know, and the labels, because there's no labels, it's not clearly marked.
We have regulations now prohibiting age, but we've just evidenced today in the committee that you can still order it no matter how old you are.
Yeah, and I've tried to order it online, but my patients are already vulnerable because they have a history of substance use disorder, and what is happening is I think they are using falsely because they believe that, you know, Kratom is going to help them get them off whatever ails them, and it's just creating another problem. It's how their disease is manifesting in another way, is with this use. So,
well, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Bless you. The board is clear. I am going to waive my closing, and I will make the motion to report Senate Bill 154 with amendments. Is there any objection? There being none, it will be reported with amendments. So, next bill, I guess is, if I can find my.